The game I will be discussing is Recettear, an item shop's tale. It focuses around a young girl who must run an item shop. To analyze the game, I will be using the EDGE framework, which consists of 3 components: educational objectives, MDA, and learning principles. First, I will discuss the educational objectives of the game. Before playing the game, students need to have some very basic understanding of mathematics and economics. Mathematics is important because the increase and decrease in prices from the base price are represented using percentages. For economics, a basic understanding of trading should be sufficient. Students may find it beneficial to have prior experience with dungeon mechanics, including equipment items, healing items, and stereotypical fighting classes such as a knight, thief, and magician, but it is not a requirement. As they progress through the game, students are likely to learn how to run an item shop, which includes using strategies to make more money, haggling to buy at cheaper prices and sell at higher prices, and choosing items differently for each customer. While these skills are generally specific to the game context, there is a chance for a more generalized version of the learned skills and knowledge to transfer. Students may learn that customers or clients must be dealt with individually. Instead of applying some rule of interaction, it is more beneficial to get to know them and their situations. In the dungeon, students will also learn the importance of performing well, but also that failure is not the end. The second part of the EDGE framework is the MDA framework, which consists of the game's mechanics, dynamics, and aesthetics. The main mechanics of the game focus on styling and running the item shop, as well as traversing the dungeon. In the item shop, players can choose different types of interior decor, which allows them to personalize their shop and leads to an expression aesthetic. It may also teach students the importance of appearance to attract customers. While running the item shop, players receive a request from the customer either to buy or sell an item, and the player then has to choose the price. Customers will then agree, try to decrease or increase the price, or simply leave if the price is too outrageous. This replicates the haggling challenge one may experience while trading. The different personalities and budgets programmed into the game also adds elements of uncertainty and allows students to learn to deal with customers individually. Another game mechanic is the periodic change in prices, which encourages students to use strategies to build up inventory, sell at higher prices, and buy at lower prices. This results in a challenge aesthetic. As for the dungeon, students choose a hero to play, explore the dungeon in a fantasy and discovery aesthetic, and kill monsters to obtain items. They can only have a maximum of 20 items, which pushes students to either choose items they need or items that are more expensive in general. If the student loses all of their health in the dungeon, they can only bring back 1 item, and the student keeps all experience gained, which penalizes failure but also shows that it is not without reward and experience. One learning principle that is strongly supported by the game is that learners get lots and lots of practice in a context where the practice is not boring. This is especially true due to the submission aesthetic experience. Players can get more than 10 customers each time they open their shop, and they can open it up to 4 times per day. For each day, they can potentially make 40 trade interactions with the customers. The random elements due to the customers' personalities and budgets also prevents the practice from becoming boring. Students can also spend an unlimited amount of time in the dungeon, which allows them to stock up on more expensive items unavailable in the stores, but each additional item above the limited 20 they can carry requires them to choose an item to discard. Students thus learn to appraise item values very frequently, but the fantasy and discovery aesthetic experiences makes the practice more engaging. One learning principle not well supported is that the learner is given explicit information both on demand and just in time. When the player is running the item shop, they cannot reference any past tutorial or general strategies. Players returning to the game or younger players may need a sort of guide to be available at all times as they play. After analyzing the game with the EDGE framework, I will introduce 2 modifications to the game mechanics that I think would make the game more educational. The first modification I would make to the game mechanics would be to give the player a limited number of opportunities to discuss with the fairy while running the item shop. I came up with this idea because currently the fairy gives the player tutorials in the beginning of the game, but those are not accessible when the item shop is open for business. I think it would be beneficial for younger players to be able to quickly consult the fairy if they forget, for example, that if an item's name is in red, then it has a price increase. There could also be a system in which the fairy will name the best price or item and explain why. The dynamics then allow the players to use these lifelines if they get stuck, which allows the challenge aesthetic to vary depending on the skill level of the player. In terms of learning objectives, this extrinsically allows players to learn haggling skills if they find that the customers are not very satisfied with the prices they set. For learning principles, this further supports the idea that learners should get lots and lots of practice in a context where the practice is not boring, because it gives them the opportunity to succeed, whereas if they keep failing, then they won't find running the item shop to have any aesthetic value. It also supports the principle that the learner is given explicit information both on demand and just in time, as it allows players to reference a general strategy while they are buying or selling an item. The second modification I would make would be to have set hours in the week during which the item shop must be open after the player reaches a certain level in the game. For example, when the player reaches level 10, the item shop will always be open during the first 2 time periods of each weekday. Currently, the game allows the players to open the shop whenever they would like, which isn't true about shops that operate in the real world. Part of the game is about emulating the experience of running a shop, and shops tend to have a regular schedule so that customers know when to come. By setting this restriction, I think the dynamics of the game will change to result in the use of more time-efficient strategies. The aesthetics will also become more challenging, because now the player must be prepared for each day the item shop has to open. This change will further reinforce the learning objectives of understanding how to run an item shop. In terms of learning principles, the idea that learners get lots and lots of practice in a context where the practice is not boring is also further supported because the players are now required to practice running an item shop every weekday. The change will also support the idea that assignments should be at the right level of difficulty for the student's level of skill or prior knowledge. As the players progress throughout the game, they could very easily attempt to use inefficient strategies that work during the beginning, and when they lose, the next playthrough will be even easier as the game allows the player to keep all items and levels. Thus, this change will make the game more difficult, but will also keep the players on track in terms of how they need to manage their time in order to beat the game.